there, everyone. Mike Mibach with KTVU Fox 2 in the San Francisco Bay Area, talking money once again with Winnie Sun, Managing Director there at Sun Group Wealth Partners. Look, last week, Winnie, we were talking about Pfizer. This week, it's all about Moderna. Investors are liking what they are seeing when it comes to these vaccines that hopefully will be widely distributed here down the road.
Yes, amazing news, right? 94% effective in preventing COVID-19. So that's the kind of news that we want to hear, especially on a Monday.
Is it enough, though, would you say, for investors to kind of start readjusting their portfolios? News such as Pfizer and Moderna coming up with a vaccine.
Well, it's hard to say, but I will say this is a really interesting financial markets right now, because in the past we would see obviously a lot of people gravitate to this good news, buying in, but we would also see on the flip side a lot of people selling and taking profit. Interesting enough, like you're seeing big numbers across the board in the financial markets today. So it seems like today's investor actually prefers to buy and hold. This is really good news. But however, how long will this last is really a wait to see sort of story right now.
You know, my mother lives with me, and really her finances, she doesn't have any finances anymore because that's just the way it is, and that's why we're caring for her. But there are people out there who have elderly parents who may still be living on their own. Is it important to discuss their, financials right now more so than any other time because of the pandemic?
It is so important because we need to have these conversations. And given that typically, we don't have these conversations until it's too late, I think the pandemic has shown us just how important it is to start conversations really early and consistently. And especially right now, as we're talking about holiday planning, Thanksgiving is next week, find those opportunities with your elderly parents. Talk to them if you can. Whether or not they have money or not, there's also a discussion of what like long-term needs are going to look like. Who's going to care for them? Where are they going to live? Like all those situations and questions, if you can get answers sooner while everybody's healthy and doing well, then the better we will be to be able to financial plan in the future.
And I guess I shouldn't just be highlighting, those in our older population, but I mean, it goes for all of us. We should be having these open discussions about where we're at, where we need to be, what do we need to put away, I guess.
Absolutely. Especially if you're older and you have an older adult children, this is also a conversation to have now. Interesting enough, people always say, well, around the holidays, you shouldn't really talk about money, but actually holidays is actually one of the best times to do this because you usually don't have work pulling you in all different directions. You actually have a really defined period of time that either you're together in person, or this year, maybe you're via Zoom or FaceTime, but think about things that you're seeing in the news and bring that into the conversation to help you bridge that discussion.
Look, I'm not a Costco person. I just go to my local market, but word on the street is that these major retailers are once again limiting, how many rolls of toilet paper, how much hand sanitizer you can actually purchase because of the surge in COVID-19 cases going across the country. Do we need to look too deep in? Are we looking too deep into this when it comes to retailers like Costco and Target when they start to do things like this?
Well, it's interesting because yes, it's toilet paper. Yes, we can probably still find it if we really need to. But then the importance of this is realizing this is sort of the sentiment of consumers out there. They are generally very concerned that they're going to have to stock up, that they're going to have to change their life. They're going to go into shutdown like we're seeing in Europe and what this means. So it's sort of like a precursor to other things in the future. So I would say, if you're concerned about COVID like we are across the country here, there are certainly things that you should consider doing and perhaps stocking up on toilet paper. If you have toilet paper, probably enough for the month should be fine. But look at other ways to kind of reduce your visit to anywhere outside, to be able stay away from the shopping centers if you can, stay away from the markets, and if you can, think about just doing curbside pickup and maybe reducing your trip even by one trip. Financially, it makes sense because you can budget for a longer period of time, but also, there's a lot of people that still need supplies. So if you hoard it, it really doesn't help your community. So it's really not a good idea. Right. But medication is definitely one that you should consider. If you can, make sure you plan ahead on that.
I want to ask you about working from home because I saw a report and I meant to look it up a little bit more in depth, and I didn't before we brought you on, but that a few 100,000 people have left New York since the pandemic. And just going out for more rural areas, getting out of the city life. So as we move forward, is it positive for the economy if employers continue to allow people to work from home? Do you think? And let's say the vaccine, everyone starts getting vaccinated, but people just continue to work from home. I can't tell if that's good for the economy or not because then people aren't going into major metropolitan cities to go to work and eat lunch at the local shop down the street.
Right. It may or may not be a good thing for the economy, but one thing that we've seen, not in New York City, in your neighborhood, even too, in Silicon Valley, we're seeing a lot of these really highly dense areas with very high rent levels, increasing people leaving and going to other areas. Now, what that does is obviously people are buying properties now and renting properties in areas that in the past weren't as popular. Not necessarily, I think, a great financial move because given, a year from now, 2 years from now, there's a good chance that your employer will want to have some sort of normalcy where they can see you come into the office a couple times a week. And so I would say on these larger financial decisions, I would wait. If anything, maybe rent so that you have the flexibility to go back if necessary. But we're seeing a lot of layoffs across the board at major companies, and that could change. And you don't want to have an excuse saying where you're not able to come in maybe once a week, that could be a reason why for them to look for somebody else for other help. So it's hard to say, but I think employers I've been talking about are definitely much more comfortable with a hybrid approach rather than all completely digital approach.
My wife works in HR, human resources, and she's dealing with open enrollment right now for the company she works for. Any recommendations? Because I know that's going on for a lot of companies right now, but during an open enrollment period, any tips, advice you could give out to people?
Absolutely. So I'm sure your wife is getting hammered with a lot of questions right now. So with open enrollment, some of the things that you want to pay attention to, there's healthcare plans now that actually allow you to get compensated for activity, for moving, for seeing fit. So take a look at those. But another big one I think all of us should look towards is if you have a legal plan at work, maybe consider that this year, especially during the pandemic, especially since we're sheltering in place for many of us, this is a great opportunity to set up your estate plan, get a living trust done, get your will done. You can do these meetings with estate planning attorneys. So if you have a legal plan at work, I highly recommend that.
Yep.
Plus, the other thing is FSA, and be really mindful of how much you're putting away for those medical expenses.
Yeah, legal plan. It's funny you mentioned that. That's something we're taking advantage of through my wife's employer. It's something we
Perfect.
haven't done yet, and we are jumping on that. Thanksgiving next week. We usually host, a sister and her 4 children and their spouses, but we shut it down, and it's just going to be 5 of us. So you think people are going to do what is being recommended, I guess, by at least the governors of California and as well as Washington and Oregon?
I don't know, Mike. I mean, that's really a good question. I don't know, between you and I, we probably could to throw a coin and we wouldn't be sure. I would say it's probably, my guess is probably about 50-50. But I will say, just because you can't get together doesn't mean you should give up and decide to have not a great holiday. I think thanks to Zoom and live streaming, all this technology, I think you can have a pretty raving party if you get creative. But I would say there's so many opportunities right now to have to surprise our family members. What we're doing here is we're planning definitely a whole digital thing with video and all sorts of fun stuff.
Oh,
But
cool.
also trying to get the kids to send gifts to the family members every single week. So especially our elderly family, making sure they get something from us every week as a
One thing
surprise.
we do is we have a family trophy that's been going on for 4 or 5 years, and we play 4 or 5 games, and then the winner gets their name engraved on the trophy. And the games are like counting gummy bears in a jar, or we have a little putt-putt thing in our garage. So my children are excited because they're like, the odds are in favor of us winning now. They haven't won it yet, and so they're all excited about that.
That's
All right,
super.
Winnie, good talking with you. Have a great
Yeah.
week, and we'll see you next week.
Sounds good. Thanks, Mike.